Like most of Europe, Scotland claims its share of phantasms in the form of white ladies, both in reality and fiction. Some years ago, when I was putting up at a friend's house in Edinburgh, I was introduced to a man who had had several experiences with ghosts. He related the following adventure which had befallen him in his childhood in Roanham Avenue near Stirling. I was always a lover of nature, he began, and my earliest boyhood memories are associated with solitary rambles through the fields and dells surrounding my home. I lived within a stone's throw of the property of Sir E.C., who has long gone to rest. God bless his soul, and I think it needs blessing, for if there is any truth in local gossip, he had lived a very queer life. Indeed, he was held in such universal awe and abhorrence that we used to fly at his approach, and never spoke of him amongst ourselves, saving in terms as Old Dour Crib, or the Laird Dill. Rowan Manor House, where he lived, was a fine specimen of 16th century architecture, and had it been called a castle, would have merited the appellation far more than many of the buildings in Scotland that bear that name. It was approached by a long avenue of trees, gigantic elms, oaks, and beeches that, uniting their branches overhead in summertime, formed barrier to the sunshine. This avenue had an irresistible attraction for me. It literally swarmed with rabbits and squirrels, and many of the times I trespassed there to watch them. I had a very secure hiding place in the hollow of the old oak, where I have often been secreted while Sir E.C. and his keepers, without casting a glance in my direction, passed unsuspectingly by, vowing all sorts of vengeance against trespassers. But to continue, I'd often heard it rumored in the village that Roanham Avenue was haunted, and that the apparition was a lady in white, and no other than Sir E.C.'s wife, whose death at a very early age had been hastened by her husband's harsh treatment. Whether Sir E.C. was really as black as he was painted, I've never been able to ascertain. The intense animosity with which we all regarded him made us believe anything ill of him, and we were quite ready to attribute all the alleged hauntings in the neighborhood to his past misdeeds. I believe my family, with scarcely an exception, believed in ghosts. Anyhow, the subject of ghosts was so often discussed in my hearing that I became possessed of an ungovernable curiosity to see one. If only the white lady would appear in the daytime, I thought, I should have no difficulty in satisfying this curiosity, but unfortunately she did not appear until night. In fact, not until long after the boys of my age had been ruthlessly ordered off to bed. Biding my opportunity, and waiting till my father was safely out of the way, on a visit to Greenock, where some business transaction would oblige him to remain for some days, I climbed out of my bedroom window. When I deemed the rest of the household to be sound asleep, scuttled away swiftly across the fields, and making short work of the lofty wall that formed the southernmost boundary of the Roanham estates, quickly made my way to the avenue. It was an ideal Sunday night in August, and hardly a sound broke the exquisite silence of the woods. How long I dallied I do not know, but it must have been fully 1 o'clock before I arrived at the outskirts of the avenue, and, advancing eagerly, ensconced myself in my favorite sanctuary, the hollow oak. All was hushed and motionless, and, as I gazed into the gloom, I became conscious for the first time in my life of a sensation of eeriness. The arched canopy of foliage overhead was strongly suggestive of a funeral pall. Not a glimmer of moonlight penetrated through it, and all beneath seemed to me to be buried in the silence and blackness of the grave. The loneliness got on my nerves. I emerged from my retreat and was preparing to fly through the wood when, from afar off, there suddenly came the sound of a voice, the harsh, grating voice of a man. Convinced this time that I had been discovered by a keeper, I jumped back into the tree and, swarming up the inside of the trunk, peeped cautiously out. What I saw nearly made me jump out of my skin, for advancing along the avenue was the thing I had always longed to see, and for which I had risked so much: the mysterious, far-famed Lady in White. A ghost, an actual, bona fide ghost. The Lady in White. I looked at her closely and noticed that she was entirely luminous, emitting a strong phosphorescent glow, like the glow of a glowworm, saving that it was in a perpetual state of motion. She wore a quantity of white drapery swathed around her in a manner that perplexed me sorely, until I suddenly realized with a creeping of my flesh that it must be a winding sheet, that burial accessory so often minutely described to me by the son of the village undertaker. Streaming over her neck and shoulders were thick masses of long, wavy golden hair, which was ruffled by the gentle summer breeze. Her face, though terrifying by reason of its unearthly pallor, was so beautiful that had not some restraining influence compelled me to remain in hiding, I would have descended from my perch to obtain a nearer view of it. Her eyes were still firmly impressed on my memory. I shall never forget them, and more than I shall forget the dainty curves of her full red lips and the snowy whiteness of her perfect teeth. Nothing, I thought, either in earth or in heaven, could have been half so lovely, and I was so enraptured that it was not until she was directly beneath me that I perceived she was not alone, that walking by her side with one arm round her waist, his face and figure illuminated with the light from her body, was Sir E.C. himself. But how changed! Gone were the black scowl, the savage tightening of the jaws, and the intensely disagreeable expression that had earned for him the nickname of the Laird Dale. And in their stead I saw love. Nothing but blind, infatuated, soul-devouring love. Love for which no words can find an adequate description. Throwing discretion to the wind, for my excitement and curiosity had risen to the highest pitch, I now thrust more than half my body out of the hole in the trunk. The next instant, with a cry of dismay, I pitched head first onto the ground. On regaining the few wits I could lay claim to, I fully expected to find myself in the hands of the irate Laird. Too frightened to move, I lay absolutely still with my eyes shut. But as the minutes glided by and nothing happened, I picked myself up. All was quiet and pitch dark. Not a vestige of the Lady in White. Not a vestige of Sir E.C. I ran all the way home, and as it was still early, far too early for any of the household to be astir, I crept up to my bedroom unobserved. But not to sleep. Oh, dear me, no. Not to sleep. For the moment I blew the candle out and got into bed, reaction set in, and I suffered agonies of fear. When I went to school in the morning, bubbling over with excitement to tell the boys what had happened, I received another shock. I was told, with a roar and shout that almost broke the drum of my ears, that the old Laird Dale was dead. His body had been found stretched on the ground a few feet from the hollow oak in the avenue, shortly after sunrise. He had died from a sudden heart attack, and so the doctor said, that had probably been caused by a shock. Some severe mental shock. I did not tell my schoolmates of my night's adventure. After all, my eagerness to do so had departed when I heard of the old laird's death.
Welcome to Brew Crime, a true crime and beer podcast.
This is a podcast where we pick a theme, cover a few cases, and pair them with craft beer.
Join me, Mike.
And me, JT.
As we explore the world of crime, conspiracies, or whatever catches our attention. You can find us on social media at Brew Crime or our website, brewcrime.com. And you can find us on any podcast app at Brew Crime Podcast.
Join us as we discuss the horrible crimes that surround us and maybe, definitely tip a bottle or two back as you do it. Drink with us the second and last Tuesday of every month.
Hey, you. Yes, you. Are you looking for a new podcast that appeals to your scientific curiosity, but is also a little bit spooky?
Show me how I died in a past life.
Well, look no further, because this cat is where it's at.
He had concerns about the ethics surrounding AI, feeling they had achieved consciousness.
Curious Cat Podcast examines the shadowy space where science and the supernatural collide. Listen every week with your host, Jennifer Holtz, as she and her guests explore what it means to be a soul in a meat suit.
We were healing karma together. They were all kind of predestined to resolve something.
Listen on all your favorite streaming apps and continue the conversation on Twitter at CuriousCatPodCA. Or find Jennifer and all her links at Jennifer L. Holtz, spelled HOTES.com.
What is the matter with you? Why on earth would anyone want to watch videos about homicide? Because you're obsessed and because you pass a construction site and wonder if there's any bodies buried underneath that foundation? You're a weirdo. Just like the rest of us here spilling that homicidal tea. What is up, YouTube? My name is Rainy B, and welcome to my channel, Homicidal Tea. This is a safe space to spill the tea on all things true crime. Just a bunch of true crimers looking for an entertaining spin on some pretty heavy subject matter. What you will get when you subscribe to my channel is a pure and unadulterated, authentic look at mostly unknown but all solved homicide cases, narrated by someone who is an empath to a fault and truly and genuinely feels for these victims and their families left behind. There's no better way to take the power back from these perpetrators than by making these videos victim focused, something that you will notice a lot around here. Something else you'll notice is I tend to use a lot of humor and memes to break up the tension.
Stop it. Get some help.
I really like making fun of the killers too, any chance I get, so I'll throw a nasty little dig in there. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel, and hopefully I'll see you in the comments on the next video. Bye!
I'm Edward October. For more true-ish, and classic tales of horror and the paranormal, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to ring the bell so you don't miss anything. Or find all of our links at Octoberpodvhs.com. Octoberpod, retro horror for bold individualists.